Hey everyone, my name is Steven and welcome back to Storytime. Without wasting any further time, let's get into our stories of the day. Staffing miscalculations? Not my problem. I am doing a bit of a spring cleaning on my computer, because we have time for that sort of thing now. Deleting some old documents and boy, did I find a doozy. Settle in and apologies in advance, but this is going to be long. 2 years ago, while I was still at uni, I worked at a restaurant for a while that sadly closed down because the owners had gotten too old to maintain it. I looked for a new job and quickly found one in another restaurant, which belonged to a big chain and was running as a system catering business instead of a small family-owned casual dining thing that I was used to, but it would pay the bills and make do, and I had no problem adapting to a new system. The team around me was incredibly nice and sweet, and working with them was actually kind of fun. However, my enthusiasm about the job vanished entirely only weeks after I had started there for 2 reasons. Number 1, the standards, or rather their absence. I was admittedly spoiled by my former job where the owners had very high standards, but the kitchen in that new place looked absolutely horrible, and the first time I stepped in there to pick up an order, I made a mental note to never ever eat there and tell my friends the same. Number 2, the management and the working schedules were an absolute nightmare. In taking advantage of their workers and treating them like dirt apparently was absolutely normal, and no one did or said anything against it. Management could step outside to have a smoke every 15 minutes, but if I dared to go to the loo more than 2 times in an 8-hour shift, I got yelled at for wasting time. Ironically, at the same time, we were encouraged to drink a lot during our shifts so we wouldn't get dehydrated since we were running around all the time. Did they think we would just evaporate all that fluid intake, or where exactly did they figure it would go? I was hardly ever allowed to take the 30-minute break that I was legally entitled to as soon as I worked 6 hours or more, with the argument that we're too busy right now to allow any breaks. But it was nevertheless always deducted from my hours on the shift sheet, and therefore my pay, which I was forced to sign off after every shift with the manager present as per company policy, even though the information given about the hours I had actually worked there were false. Not signing was threatened to be considered insubordination and grounds for firing. Luckily, I always made a protocol for myself at home with the actual data. On top of that, it took me 30 minutes to commute to my workplace with public transport, and it routinely happened that I either got a text canceling my entire shift when I was literally 5 minutes away from the restaurant, or, which happened more often, that I came into work as scheduled on the shift plan and was told to sit down at the bar until they had figured out whether or not they had work for me to do. I usually spent about 2 hours at the bar on average until they sent me home again for the day, unpaid, of course. Once, they made me sit for 4 entire hours, refusing to let me leave until the manager finally decided they had no work for me today after all. I was super annoyed and gritted my teeth the first couple of times after I was being told that that was just how they handled things routinely because they were overstaffed. I still failed to see how that was my problem. However, after this happened several times in a row, I took heart one night and called in an hour before my shift and asked whether or not they were sure I could come in and actually work tonight, because I was tired of paying for bus tickets to commute to a job I didn't even get to do. The manager yelled at me that I was being insolent for even asking and to come in, or he would write me up as a no-show. Of course, I came to work punctually as always and was dragged off to the office by the manager immediately to get a talking to. He told me it was not my place to question the shift plan and that when I was scheduled to work, it should be a given for me to show up and they needed to be able to rely on that. I reminded him politely but firmly that I always came in 10 minutes early for my shifts and that I am always reliable, but that they weren't. I informed him that I had not been put to work and sent home again several times unpaid when I had already paid for the bus ticket to come and cleared my personal and academic schedule for the shift, and that I considered that kind of treatment very disrespectful towards me as an employee, my work, and my time. I told them when I am listed on the shift plan to work, I should be able to expect and rely on them too, to be able to work and earn money that night, and I was tired of getting the brunt end of the stick for their staffing miscalculations. I didn't apply for this job to not be put to work and get sent home unpaid, let alone going home with a minus because I had already paid for the bus ticket to come into work in the first place. He proceeded to yell at me that this was just how gastronomy works. My experience of 3 waitressing jobs before that one determined that this was a big fat lie. And if I didn't like it the way they ran this business, I could get another job, and good luck getting one with the reference he would write for me. I was livid, but I pulled through my shift and decided on my way home that I was going to do some homework that very night, because this could not possibly be legal. So after about 2 hours of research about workers' rights, laws, and business regulations in my country, I had come up with a whopping 4 pages of laws and regulations that they were actively and routinely breaking, and which I could prove they were breaking thanks to my phone records. Shift plans and staffing coordination was done via WhatsApp. If that wasn't leverage, I don't know what is. If I wanted to, I could have gone to the respective authorities and get that shack shut down for good, but I decided I would not yank all my lovely colleagues out of work, since most of them depended on that job, but that I'd rather look for a new job and bide my time until then. Here's the real kicker though. What my employer evidently either didn't know or chose to ignore was a neat little law in my country that is called default of acceptance, which basically means that if you're scheduled for a shift by your boss and you show up on time ready to work, but your boss chooses not to put you to work while you are there, you are still entitled to be paid for that shift, because you fulfilled your contractual obligations as an employee. You showed up, offered your work and your time as demanded by your boss through the shift sheet, and the lack of work is not your fault. For me in my situation, it meant I was entitled to be paid for every single shift they had me sit at the bar and send me back home again without giving me anything to do. I then looked over my carefully kept protocols, detailing exactly for how many hours I had been scheduled to work which day, how long I was there, how long they made me wait, and who had sent me home that day. And I did the math and got the biggest grin you could possibly imagine. So I sent out some applications and meanwhile kicked off the malicious compliance phase. I did not call in and ask again whether or not I could please come and work, and I would shut off my phone for the 30 minutes commute to work, so they would have no chance to cancel me last minute again before I arrived. If I was on the shift plan, naturally, I'd be there. I maliciously complied by playing the dutiful and downbeaten employee who had accepted their miserable fate and was grateful to have a job at all. My manager was very pleased and smug, obviously thinking he broke me. Little did he know he had another thing coming his way. I came to work dutifully without question, never complained about being told to sit down and wait again, and on top of that, I made a point of always bringing some homework for uni, which the petty little passive-aggressive lady that I am would demonstratively do while I was expected to sit at the bar, twiddling my thumbs and waiting to have work bestowed upon me. I had decided if I had to comply with this nonsense for some more time, I might as well use that waiting time to my benefit and get some studying done. So whenever I was told to sit down and wait to be put to work, I'd smile, say, sure, no problem, I'll wait, sat down and whipped out my books, knowing fully well that I was entitled to get paid either way because it was their choice not to put me to work and make me wait out my shift. I was even getting weird looks from the guests as I sat there in full work uniform, buried in my books and my papers on the counter and studying for my exams. Whenever I was approached by a customer who wanted to order something or complain, I'd smile sweetly and pointedly say, sorry, I'm on standby, please try one of my colleagues. Not only did I get some decent studying done, I literally wrote 2 papers partly on that counter during those 2 weeks, but them continuing with their policy of demanding me to come in without intending to actually put me to work meant I was piling up hours and hours of default of acceptance. And I kept a protocol of every single delicious second of it meticulously, as well as snapping photos and writing down which staff had been there that day as irrefutable evidence that I had been there, in case this would get legal. After 3 months in that joint, I had found a new job, and when I came to work the next day after my successful job interview at the next place, I personally handed my manager my termination letter with the usual 2 weeks notice. He looked very puzzled at that fat envelope I handed him. As an addendum, I had attached the 4 pages of workers' rights regulations and business laws they were breaking, a copy of my working and waiting protocols of the last 3 months, a table overview of all the default of acceptance hours I had accumulated in those 3 months, and all the 30-minute breaks I hadn't been allowed to take, plus which superior had denied me to take them that day, and therefore was entitled to get paid for, and a final total of default of acceptance hours, and the resulting sum of money I was legally owed in wages. Underneath that, I had written I expected that money to be added to my last paycheck and that I would consider legal action otherwise since the law was clearly on my side. My manager took the envelope into the office while I got to work, and when he came back to the service floor again, he was white as a sheet of paper. That manager never spoke to me or looked me in the eye again. Pleasure doing business with you too, good sir. I maintained a perfect record of showing up to work until the day I left. Curiously, I was always put to work and never asked to wait during the last 2 weeks. Said goodbye to my lovely colleagues and told them all they had rights and to inform themselves and to not let themselves be taken advantage of by this management anymore. 2 weeks later, I got a check with my last month's pay plus everything I had been legally owed. And no further comment from management whatsoever. They also completely neglected to write me a reference, by the way, as well as text messages from 2 more colleagues that they had followed my lead and also quit, moving on to better things. I'm still in contact with them both and we have become good friends. Whenever we go out and drive by that place, we roll down the windows and show it the middle finger. It has become a juvenile but fun tradition. I have done some bad jobs in my time, but that one was by far the worst. Thanks for reading, hope you enjoyed. If that were me, I'd definitely be feeling the way OP was feeling. Slighted because I would be wasting money to go there, waste time, and then be told to go back for nothing. How would you feel and what would you do if you were in OP's shoes here? Let me know in the comments below. You want to speak to someone else? Sure, try next week. To preface this, I work for a call center for the gaming industry, specializing in account management. Basically anything that involves a customer's gaming account. I am the guy that ensures your account is secure, and I assist with queries relating to the account. It has its perks. Heck, working for the industry has its bragging rights, but my god, I can do without people's stupidity, especially when it comes to having customers not being able to answer our security questions relating to the account. If a customer passes the checks, well done, I am happy, they are happy, and we try to suss out what's wrong. Now if they don't pass it, normally company policy simply requires us to say in a tactful way, sorry, you are crap out of luck. I try to be a bit lenient and give more than ample opportunities for customers to clear their security checks, even go as so far to provide an email reminder of what we need and where they can find the info. Most of the times, this bears fruit. But not so much the case of this one customer whom I dealt with for an agonizing 4 times in the span of 5 months. This customer, let's call him Serial Whiner, is a real piece of work. Whenever he calls, I shudder to even deal with him as he didn't leave a good first impression. On his first call to me, he was lodging a complaint of being rudely cut off by another agent, as well as wanting his query solved. Being new, I wanted to give a better experience, and so I tried to placate and follow through. It was when we got to the reference I found out why Serial Whiner got cut off. He failed security. Hoping this was a fluke, I go through the security procedure with Serial Whiner. Sure enough, he failed. Now what transpired is how Serial Whiner operates almost down to a T. First stage, denial. I'm terribly sorry, Serial Whiner, but the details you provided me do not match with what we have on file. I'm afraid unless you know those details, I'm afraid I can't assist you further. My way of attempting to give a customer an out by providing alternative details, or if they're unsure where to go from here, I provide my helpful email. This is ridiculous. I simply want to do query of the day and I have given you all the right answers. His definition of right answers was simply the reasons or convenient excuses as to why he could not provide answers to security questions when asked of him. I'm sorry, but sadly those are not the right answers when checking them with the account. Second stage, bargaining. Well, what must I give then? Because I have given you the right answers. Well, Serial Whiner, you need to provide X, Y, and Z. You have yet to do that and haven't done so. So what I can do is send out an email highlighting all we need. And to make things easier, here's a reference number for you. Is there anything else I can do for you today? Third stage, angry re. No, I'm not going to stand for this. Get me a supervisor or let me speak to someone else. It's at this stage when the first and third call I had with Serial Whiner to placate him with a supervisor callback promise. Of the 4 times I had gotten a hold of him, he only cleared his security once. So this is the sorry piece of work who would star in our story today. It was just this past week. We are severely short-staffed due to circumstances beyond our control. It also doesn't help us with the fact main office has been forced to close, and many of my coworkers have not installed their home office setup as of yet. As such, we are getting hounded by calls from customers who have waited an average of 1.5 hours for service, some even going as far as stating they waited 3 hours. It's truly not ideal for us or anyone. To be frank, we could have also helped many more had some customers not fail their checks and throw a hissy fit. However, I digress. It's nearing the end of the workday and shift, and it seems Lady Misfortune had to pair me with Serial Whiner, who I didn't recognize at first as I was half drained. What can I do for you today?
I was just wondering about my account. I have query. Just calling to confirm that.
Certainly. I just need to take down a few details. After putting them in, my brain woke up and realized I was speaking with Serial Whiner. Great. Just what I didn't need. Another bloody time waster. So I proceeded to call as normal, and here's how it panned out. I'm just going to have to ask you a few questions. Can you provide X?
No, you see, I had done such, and as such, I can't provide X.
Ah, okay. Then can you provide Y?
I wrote down Y to remember, but I have lost that. And
Gives another personal excuse.
so I can't provide Y.
Me trying to give Serial Whiner an out. Do you have anything to assist with helping you provide Y?
No.
Okay, then can you provide me with Z?
To be honest, I wouldn't have a clue where Z is.
Which is bollocks because he had received my email from the first time this occurred. Me once more trying to give Serial Whiner an out. Well, if you simply check,
Look, I just can't provide Z. Can we just address my query, please?
and just like that, clearly, like 2 times before I had him, he failed security. It was at this point we got to the aforementioned Serial Whiner Stage 1, which went exactly like clockwork. However, this time, surprisingly, he didn't go to Stage 2. He merely repeated himself that he provided the right answers. Getting tired of Serial Whiner's song and dance, I politely interjected. Me again trying to give Serial Whiner an out of this predicament. Serial Whiner, you clearly did not provide the right answers, otherwise you would have passed your checks. If you could simply provide me with... It was then Serial Whiner went full on Stage 3 demanding to speak to someone else and cue my malicious compliance. Now, I was half tired and annoyed, with half of my brain listening to Serial Whiner gripe. Yet when he made his first demand, my left side of the brain hatched a devious plan and went on full autopilot. I tried once more to interject and explain. Serial Whiner set the stage for me to do the following. Serial Whiner, I am sorry, but even if you speak to someone else, they will say the same thing.
I don't care, just let me speak to someone else.
Very well, you wish to speak to someone else then?
Yes, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Right then, I am just going to end the call. Thank you for contacting us. Click. So, by ending the call, I gave Serial Whiner the ability to speak to someone else. He just has to wait the next week to do so, as there was only 20 minutes left of active support left, and he wasn't going to get through the call queue fast enough to annoy anyone else for the day on Friday. And due to the new restrictions, we don't work Saturdays until further notice, so 2 days of bliss achieved. You gotta give kudos to people that work in call centers like this because they gotta have the patience of a saint to deal with some of these people. If I was in OP's shoes, I'd be pretty frustrated with Serial Whiner. But with that, that's both of the stories we have for today, so which of these 2 stories were your personal favorite? Let me know which one and why in the comments below. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to let me know which of these 2 stories were your personal favorite of the day. Thank you all again for watching and listening to the Storytime channel.